Welcome to the Daughter Dearest Podcast with Simone and Olivia Knego, making the world a better place one conversation at a time. Mom Simone and daughter Olivia share authentic discussions about everything under the sun, including those things you might be thinking about but feel uncomfortable talking about. Thanks for tuning in. Now here are your hosts, Simone and Olivia.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Daughter Dearest Podcast. I'm Simone Knego.
And I'm Olivia Knego. And today's episode is a little bit different because I am actually not in my normal filming location right now. I'm in Boston for my older sister's birthday. So I am lacking all of my tech that I normally have. But I think the sound still sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I think you still sound pretty good. Yeah, not too bad. Not too shabby.
Yeah, thank you, Apple, not me.
So today,
what are we talking about today?
Yeah, today we are going to be talking about happiness. And I bet we're going to have a bit differing opinions on happiness. So it's kind of going to be interesting to hear what you think versus what I think. And we're going to start it off with like some statistics because why not?
Yeah.
So
it's measurable.
I guess it's measurable. Like what does happiness mean?
That was really funny that you immediately said, I guess it's measurable after. So to prep for this, I just typed in ChatGPT, give me some stats on happiness. And then the first thing that it says is happiness is actually not measurable, it's subjective. So these statistics might not even be necessarily accurate, which going through it kind of makes sense because it's the way you rate yourself. It is subjective. It's not you are this % happy today. And you don't even know what, I guess it's, I don't even know what I'm trying to say because it's the way you come off to people, the happiness that you might extrude to other people it could not be what you're feeling on the inside.
Well, that doesn't mean that you're happy though. That just means you're energetic. I think the way there's a difference between truly being happy and I think it's different for every single person.
Yeah.
So here are some definitions of being happy. Feeling content or satisfied, being an agent of one's own happiness. Okay, I'm an agent of my own happiness, which I do believe in. And actually, there is a statistic that says that the approximate percentage of your happiness that is truly up to you is 40%. So if you can give yourself that 40% every day, which is really hard, but at least you're starting at a base point. So that has to come from within yourself. Okay. Emphasizing inner enrichment over material satisfaction, which is another hard one. We're going to talk about that for sure. And maintaining a positive outlook on the future, something I really try to do, but also sometimes can be very difficult for people. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow. I don't even know where to begin. I think that 100% we are the agents of our own happiness. I think that the concept of relying on other people to elicit any kind of emotion is incredibly harmful because not to say that you can't rely on people. You can, don't get me wrong, but I feel like you're never going to be able to find that lasting and true happiness if it's not within yourself. The moments of happy that you will find will be fleeting because it's not just in your core.
It's just what we talk about with confidence when we talk about what I think are the 4 parts of confidence, which are self-respect, self-acceptance, self-worth, and self-love. Those, again, they're all selves. You have to have those within you to truly, I feel, to truly be confident and really feel confident about yourself. So I think the same thing goes with the happiness piece, is that you have to find that within you. And sometimes it can be really hard, right? There are crappy things that happen in our lives that make us very unhappy, but it's how we respond to those things that I think truly make us be able to move to the next section and truly be happy.
Yeah. I think one of the stats that I just saw was that the average life satisfaction out of 10 is 5.5. So right in the middle. But thinking about that, the idea of satisfaction being happiness, I don't think is a thing. I don't think they correlate, because I think you can find happiness without being satisfied in life.
You think?
Yeah.
Give me an example.
And
That's a
I'm
hard
thinking
one.
on a global level.
Okay.
So I think that satisfaction can come from achieving your goals, or like being able to provide for your family, or maybe even getting that designer item of clothing that you always wanted. And sure, that will bring you happiness, but I think happiness doesn't necessarily come when you're satisfied, because, well, you always see money doesn't buy you happiness. And I think that's a prime example. Just because these people have all the money in the world does not mean they're happy. But then if you look at it the other way around, like maybe individuals that do not have a lot of money are not satisfied with their lives, but that doesn't mean they're completely unhappy. They probably find happiness in the everyday joy of things. And obviously I'm not in that situation, so I can't speak for anybody. But I think like by equating that, it's like, I don't know, you're kind of like eliminating some people of the opportunity to even be happy.
So I think when we talk about the financial piece, there's actually some interesting studies on that. And in the past, it said, I actually remember years ago, I remember talking to my sister that the optimal salary for a person to be happy was around $60,000. This was years ago. And the reason that was, and the reason there are still statistics like that today, a higher number, but still statistics, because when you have that amount of money, you stay in the same house, right? You do the daily things. You don't go out to eat all the time. So as soon as you go up to the next section of income, then you keep reaching for more, and you become less happy because you want the next best, biggest thing, and it's so much harder to achieve, and then you're unhappy.
Yeah.
But these days, so there's two different studies I found. One said that it's about 95,000 to 105,000. Those people are the happiest. But someone else said that was Purdue University. They said,
and is this specific to the United States?
No,
obviously.
Purdue University found the ideal average income for people worldwide is 95,000 to 105,000. Oh,
American
wait.
dollars? Okay.
This doesn't make sense. Okay, for people worldwide is 95,000 and 105,000 in the US. Sorry. So worldwide is 95,000, 105,000 in the US, which that seems very high to me.
No, and it's the 105 on a US level alone is incredibly high. But if you're 95,000 worldwide, when the average income in some of these countries that are not as developed as the US are maybe like 1,000 a year, is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what, but then again, there are so many, when you think of the countries that have billionaires, so many, and well, I'm talking about like people who are mega wealthy. Maybe that kind of offsets it. I'm not sure.
I think that's such an interesting thing when it comes to all of these studies. It was like regionality is such a big aspect in it because of like government policies and also just like way of life.
Yeah. So that's this new study. And I guess this same person did a study back in like 2010. I didn't look up their name. I was like, it just was interesting to me. They said that 500,000 is the amount that you'll be happy at. Well, how many people are making $500,000? So like, are you telling me most of the world is unhappy then?
I think that, that is silly. I think money, it relates to comfort, and comfort in turn can bring happiness, but I don't think that you need to have money to be happy.
I think you need to have like a base amount of money, because otherwise life is really complicated, right? I mean, when you're dealing with poverty and you don't know where you're going to sleep and you don't know when you're going to get your next meal, I think that's got to be, again, I'm not in that situation, but that it would be very hard to find happiness when you don't have your basic needs covered.
Yeah.
But
do you think so I'll read you the countries that are global happiness ranks. So the top 10 are Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, Iceland, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Luxembourg, New Zealand, and Austria. So all countries that have more of I don't want to say socialist because that's not really the right word, but a government that provides a lot more baseline resources to everybody than necessarily the United States, which is that's what they say is high levels of social support contribute to their happiness. So then it makes you think, like, is that the reason? Is the reason that these countries are inherently happier is because they have more resources and support? They can't just fall through the cracks?
That's a great point. And I think also when I look at those countries, they have different ways of doing things. So like when we visited Switzerland and Sweden, and so much of their lives are based outdoors, even winter months, right? So
Oh, yeah.
they have that part to it, which I think is actually quite important.
I'm really glad. I would like to talk about like the idea of being outdoors as part of happiness, but please continue.
Yeah. But then the other thing is, I'm curious if we looked at those countries, and I haven't studied this, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
Is the median income, is it a pretty large view, right? Like, so when you're looking at, is there a very small poverty group of people below the poverty line?
Yeah.
Is there not a huge amount of people that make millions and millions of dollars a year? So everybody is pretty standardized in terms of their range of income. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just a thought process on it.
Yeah. But I think that I hate that the fact of society, it seems that through what we've discovered so far, is that not to necessarily be happy, but seems like to maintain happiness, you have to have wealth. And I just really don't like that, because this society's not fair, and like you can't just have money. Even if you work your ass off, you can't just have money, and you shouldn't deserve to be unhappy just because you don't have money.
Well, that's why I think so much of happiness has to come from within yourself, that you have to decide that you're good right where you are. And that, I mean, that's very personal, right? I mean, there's some people that have friends that are much wealthier than they are, and they struggle because even though they really like their friends, it's hard to always feel like that you're not doing enough, or that you can't make that money. Or so I think that is a really hard thing for people.
Yeah, I think. I mean, you said it before. You always want what you can't have. So I think that definitely totally affects people, especially if you, and even outside of a monetary level, just base your self-worth on the worth of others. I think that it immediately is like a downward spiral into an unhappy life.
Well, that's
but how do you find your happiness?
So I think there's a few things that I think about when I think about happiness. Sure. I mean, the financial part, actually, I do think the more you make, the more stressed you are, because you buy the bigger house, you buy the nicer car, you send your kids to private school. Not always, but I'm just generalizing some stuff. And it adds another level of stress, because then you have to maintain that level. So I don't think that, I think like a certain amount of money is helpful.
I also think, I think there's a level, by the way. I feel like it's like one of those, what do you call those? I don't know, I haven't taken math. A curve, the you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, but the one
X and Y axis.
Like, I agree with, like, when you get to a certain point, like, it gets more stressful. But then I think, once again, when you're at like Jeff Bezos' level of money.
Oh yeah, I mean, so yes,
and I cannot imagine that he's happy. I cannot imagine that
they actually say. I mean, I have no idea about him, but they say so many people who are uber wealthy are not happy, because guess what happens? You then are either you're surrounded by other people who are uber wealthy, or you are surrounded by people who want to use you for your money, right? And again, overgeneralization there, but a lot of people have a hard time finding really good friends, because are they really your good friend, or are they there because you have this financial ability to support them in other things? So I think that becomes a big factor with people when they have a lot of money.
And to further overgeneralize, because I talk about all the time, if I was a billionaire, that I would literally solve the climate change crisis. You can't really become a billionaire without like some human rights violation. Like, there's literally no way to do it. ethically. So I think the good people that would probably have been around for you are no longer around because they've seen the kind of person you become.
Yeah, I think that's a big overgeneralization and a very strong statement. I mean, I'll allow it.
Yeah.
but I don't.
And this was mostly directed at Jeff Bezos, by the way, because he could literally clean up the Pacific garbage patch and still send everybody in the US to college. So
yeah, you wonder what people think when they have that much money. And
I would literally do it. I would solve it. I would solve the climate change crisis. And like a good reason alone, A, I would be known for solving the climate change crisis. Duh.
Yeah.
B, because why do you need that much money? Because I just like don't think that money directly relates to happiness. And maybe I'm just like a naive 21-year-old who hasn't had to live on her own yet, which is still incredibly true. But
Yeah.
I hate the idea of thinking that for the rest of my life, the paycheck that comes in is going to dictate my emotions.
Again, I think you'll get to a certain part where it will affect you. I mean, it just is, it is what it is. You start trying to do more things and then you realize, oh, wait, if I don't have this much, I have to work this much harder to make this much money. And then this is going to be this much more stressful. So I do think you do start thinking about those things. But maybe when you're going through, since we're having this conversation now, if you're aware of it all the time and you're like, wait, I'm not going to push myself to that next level because I know that is going to mean that I'm going to have to work that much harder, which am I going to be as happy working that much harder? Maybe if you're aware of it, maybe it's easier to control. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see as you grow up.
Yeah. Okay. Outside of money, though.
Yeah, I have a few things.
How do you find your happiness?
Yeah, so I think family, friends, and health. So, and I think those are, and actually I think across the board, those are probably true for a lot of people. One of the things I found that, take a guess, how much socializing per day leads to the highest level of happiness?
I want to guess a solid 5 hours.
Pretty close.
Am I wrong?
6 or 7 hours.
Whoa, that's a lot. A lot more than people do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you think about it, if you're working a 9-to-5 office job, so you're going into the office, the amount of socializing that you're having a day, unless you're like in a field that you're having meetings and meetings and meetings, is still probably only an hour or two at work. A lot of the times you're sitting at your desk, just, doing your work. And then you get home, and if you live with your roommates, maybe you'll talk to them. And if you live by yourself, then you're just, yeah. God, being an adult sounds really lonely.
You're pretty funny. But what's interesting is that amount of time, and again, these studies are just studies, and again, it's all subjective.
Everybody's
so when we say these things, yeah, it's just fun facts that we found that it's just interesting to talk about. So they are people that spend a quarter of their hours each day with family and friends are 12 times as likely to report feeling joyful rather than feeling stressed or anxious. Like, that's a huge difference.
Wait,
so let's think back to COVID.
Quarter of an hour?
Quarter of their day. So quarter of their hours each day. So, I mean, if let's say waking hours, right? So if you're up for...
not to say everybody was happy during COVID. No. So many people were struggling. So many people lost their family members. There was a good portion of the population, though, that I don't want to be like they got fat and happy during COVID. But yeah, for some people, it was definitely like a blessing in disguise. And that does not discredit the thousands of people that lost their lives during this pandemic. Overall, it was a tragedy. But for a lot of people, it was a good way for them to reconnect and find that happiness again.
For a lot of people, and for a lot of people, it did the exact opposite. I mean, think about cities like New York where you were stuck in your apartment. Right. Yeah. And you couldn't go anywhere. So
not even outside.
For where we were, obviously living in Florida, we weren't shut down for
but we had family restrictions.
Yeah, but I'm saying that, but we all came together. So we had our whole family home. So when you have 8 people, you have a large variety of people you can talk to and stuff that you can do on a daily basis. So like for us, it was a lot of socialization, maybe more than what we're used to, because we couldn't go anywhere else. We had to talk to each other all day long, play games all day long,
Yeah.
So I think that, okay, going back to what you asked me about, like, what are the things that, family and friends, those are huge. And actually, there was another statistic that said that you're 25% happier if one of your good friends lives within a mile of you. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but it makes sense because you could just like jump back and forth to their house.
I mean, yeah, as someone that lives within one of my closest friends literally lives in my apartment. One of my other closest friends lives down the hall from me. And my other closest friend, if she's not at my apartment, she's 2 blocks away. So yeah, I can totally say that the times that I've had this semester, like as a college senior, I've had the greatest opportunity to spend so much time with my friends this semester. And I will say it's probably been my happiest semester.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, you don't feel alone.
I don't. I wake up, I can send a text and someone's like within an hour and a half. And then we'll just spend the day together. And I will say, like, it is, I mean, I said before, being an adult sounds lonely. Being a college student can be lonely. Being a college student in a city specifically can be incredibly lonely if you don't have that friend group. And even if you do, there's no community center, there's no dorm building where everybody gathers. You have to do it on your own time. And so I've just been so lucky in this aspect that I've had my community of friends and family. And I don't know, I feel like longtime listeners of the show definitely know I am such a family person. Like, I'm home. I see my parents at least once a month, which I think most people cannot say the same for.
Not as a college senior, that's for sure.
No, I don't think most people are like.
Yeah,
I have friends that their parents literally live 45 minutes away in New Jersey, and they see them once a semester.
Yeah, we did a couple things right, so that's good. Just a couple.
I would like to switch gears real quick from friends and family, though. I know we said health. I would like to talk about the outdoors.
Yeah.
Because great reminder, I don't know about in Florida, but up north right now, we just overcame this terrible rainstorm, and the weather today is absolutely gorgeous out. And that is, for me, we've had an episode about seasonal depression. That is like the number one indicator of my happiness. I mean, besides like myself, like I'm at that 40%, maybe a little bit less than that. But like the other percentage is so the weather, because that's why COVID sucked, though, because being stuck inside is not good for you on a physical and a health level. You need the sun, you need the fresh air.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when we looked at the countries that we talked about at the beginning, I think so much of their lives are based on outdoor activities, which obviously there's plenty. When you look at geographically at the United States, it's so hard to make. Yeah. You can definitely point out the states where they spend more time outside, right?
Yeah.
Florida is probably 50-50, right? Because in the winter, it's absolutely beautiful. In the summer, people still go to the beaches, but it gets hot. And when you live here, you don't necessarily want to be out there when it's 95 degrees and 100% humidity. So each state is different. But I can see with those countries, I think that's got to be a factor in the happiness piece, is that so much of their lives are outdoors.
And the healthcare aspect as well. I think that's huge portion of just like, I mean, I think the stats that I was looking at before did say like mental and physical well-being are a huge part in happiness. Like chronic health conditions and just like lack of medical care can be a huge, like, deciphering factor if you're happy or not.
For sure. And when we look at, again, back to the countries we were talking about at the beginning, that a lot of them have government run healthcare. Yeah. And so everybody at least gets a minimum piece. And even when you upgrade to a higher level, it's still so much less expensive than it is here. And not only that, I don't want to say the quality of care, because I'm married to a doctor. I mean, he's an amazing physician. The quality of care is great, but it's a different thing. Like, I remember my sister had surgery, and here it would have been outpatient. She would have had the surgery. She would have gone home in a few hours. There, she spent 5 days in the hospital, and that's just how they do it there. Yeah. So, and that's the same thing. You have a baby now. You're like, you have a baby and you're out.
You're in and out.
I think she had a week with her kids in the hospital.
Well, you want to be in and out, because Lord knows the hospital bills for having a baby are literally like the same amount as getting a heart transplant. Well,
if you
probably
have to
less,
stay,
hopefully.
yeah, no, it's definitely less. But if you have to stay because your child has to go to the ICU, then yeah, your bills are huge. But there, it's just not saying that the babies are going to the ICU, but there you have a certain number of days where you're supposed to be staying in the hospital.
I think it's like in those countries, you kind of have the additional support where your friends and family would pick up the slack. So, like, for us, we have this community. So, hypothetically, if either of us was to give birth at this given moment in time,
Oh my God, don't say
don't
something like that.
hopefully
Gee
never. Well, I mean,
Louise.
hopefully not right now, at least. Jesus. But we wouldn't be able to spend 10 days in the hospital, but we would have 10 days of meals and people coming over to take care
Yes.
of us.
Yeah, we definitely would have that
But
whole.
that's a privilege that we have,
Yeah,
and
it's
not
that
a lot of
community
people in the
support.
country can.
It's community support, and it's a community support that leads to happiness as well, right? When you have that support
Yeah.
system and you don't feel like you're alone, I think that's also a big factor in happiness.
But I still think at its core it comes from you, because you can have all of these things and you still can't you still might not be happy.
Right.
And that's when I'm going to tell you should seek support for your mental health.
Agreed. One other piece I want to talk about, and I think this was an interesting one, and actually it goes back to when I talk about positive affirmations, and I use the number 5, so 5 I am statements, and you say them 5 times every day. There's a reason I say 5. So because there was I think there's been more than one study, but a study that I looked at that said that couples who are in a happy relationship have a 5-to-1 ratio of good exchanges to bad exchanges. And I think that is such an important thing, whether it's your best friend or your spouse or your partner, whoever it is, that everybody's going to have bad exchanges, right? There's not going to be a time where you're not going to be like, oh, every word that comes out of my mouth is happy, happy, joy, joy, right? That just doesn't exist. But if you can remember to balance yourself, where, if you say like something horrible or something negative to your partner, then it takes 5 positive things to kind of change that. You need 5 positive things to kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
what to say, regroup from that one negative.
That's like always see the influence online that, like, regardless of the thousands of positive comments, they'll only think about the hate comment.
Yeah. So you have to like remind yourself that. And so when you're in a relationship, that especially in a marriage, that when you have that one negative comment that came out, if you keep saying negative comments, it's going to be very hard to come back from that. Actually, it said that the people who ultimately divorced had just 0.8 happy encounters for every one negative interaction. It's kind of sad, right?
Sad.
So less happy than negative.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been like doom scrolling on Reddit recently, and
my goodness,
these like relationship forums, and reading how terrible these people's marriages are. And I don't know why I do it. I think for the drama of it all, and hopefully that whoever's in the wrong gets revenge. I love when that happens, or whoever's been wronged gets revenge. I love it. But it does really make you think about, it's horrifying to see how many people out there are in unhappy friendships and unhappy relationships, or just like unhappy with themselves. And like, there's people on the internet, but just so many times I want to be like, you just need someone that, like, a friend.
You just need a hug.
You just, because I mean, not for everybody. I know that physical touch is not for everybody, but for me at least, I just need a hug. And I don't like physical touch it's a long story, but I like physical touch from my mom and my boyfriend, and that's it.
It's kind of funny. Yeah. Yes. She always needs a hug. I need a hug. I need a hug. Yeah, I'll give you a hug.
Friends at school, I probably hug them 4 times.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
They'll be like, do you want to cuddle? Like, we'll be laying in bed, like, get off of me and do not touch me.
So I was on a podcast yesterday and we talked about love languages. So mine is words of affirmations.
Mine, giving, is like, in terms of like how I show my love, is acts of service. Mm-hmm. So like when I go over to Jack's place, I'll clean his room for him, even though he's like, why did you do that? I don't like my room clean. Because I don't put
You
things
do.
the way he likes it,
Oh, yeah,
but
well.
I'm like, I like it. And I
Yeah.
think receiving it's like words of affirmation.
Yeah.
And physical touch, but from specific people, aka my mom and my boyfriend. So
Yeah. I hear you. And that leads to happiness too, right? When you figure out what you need. And that was one of the things we talked about is like what you need versus what you give, right?
And they can be different things because I give what I can give, but like I don't get what I give, you know, in the same way, like I don't expect someone to come in and clean my room for me. And that's how they would show me love.
Yeah. And I mean, your dad and I, we have two completely different love languages. He's all about physical touch, like in the middle of the night, he wants to hold my hand and, you know, and so I think for a long time I was like, why can't you just do things the way I like to do them? And he's like, why can't you do things the way I like to do them? And then you had to have this realization of that. Oh, wait.
That's the
Yeah.
best part about life though, is that we don't do things the same.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that that's like been one of the joys of growing up and like being able to explore and be semi-independent is like that every person I meet interests me and fascinates me in some way because they have something different about them that I've never seen before.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. I think that is such an important point. And so when it comes to relationships, it's like making yourself aware of that person is not going to respond the same way that I respond. And I have to figure out how I can adjust myself to meet their needs and how they adjust their selves to meet my needs. Not changing who you are, but just understanding. Yeah, understanding that this person has certain needs, and how do I, if I really love them, figure out how I can work with them to make sure that they feel the same kind of level of happiness.
And as like a contingent to that, like if your happiness is coming at the expense completely of the other person's, you have to recognize that relationship, whether it's a friendship or something romantic, is not right for you. And no matter changing that you can do on either aspect is not going to fix the happiness that's not there.
It's such
There's someone out there for everybody.
Absolutely.
But not everybody is made for you.
That's a great way of saying it, because I see couples all the time and I think there really is someone for everyone. Like it just is so cool to see people who might be super quirky and the person they're with is super quirky too. And you're like, oh my gosh, they are so perfect together.
Makes total sense.
Right? Yeah. You see it and you're like, okay, I get that. That is like fantastic. And yeah, but not every person is made for you, right? And I don't know if I believe the whole thing, like there's one person for you in the world.
No, there's not one. Maybe for some people there's just like one if you're really, really niche with your interests, sure. But I think that the more important takeaway is there are people like you, there are people that you will get along with. They might not be exactly like you, whatever. But it's okay that you don't get along with everybody. It's okay that you can't be friends with everybody. You can still be nice.
Oh yeah, it's important to be kind.
But you do not have to be friends with everybody. And you do not have to, your happiness does not have to come at the expense of anybody else's, whether that's a stranger or a friend.
And I think that's pretty much a great way to end it.
Thank you. That was so wise of me. Someone write that down.
I know, right? You are wise. Look at you. You took ownership of that. Have you been doing your positive affirmations? I have been trying. I've been so much kinder to myself recently, actually. Oh, that's good. See, this stuff is working.
Maybe it's because spring is starting, but no, I'm kidding. I just have been, because you know what? It's kind of miserable being miserable. Yes.
You have a choice every day when you wake up, right? You can choose to be happy. You can choose to be angry. You can choose to be miserable.
If the stat that you said before is correct, that we are only in charge of 40% of our happiness, well, at least be 40% happy.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, that all, and I actually think it's more than that, but I think that it comes, so much of our happiness does come from within, and what we, instead of trying to be someone else, like just be yourself. I think that is, again, focus for the day. So I had ChatGPT generate me a quote of the day because I don't have my calendar with me. Oh, that's right. Okay. Okay, good. I asked for an inspirational message. So what do we get?
Embrace each new day as an opportunity for growth, kindness, and courage. Remember, even the smallest acts of compassion and determination have the power to ignite positive change.
Perfect. Yeah. Goes along with everything that we're talking about. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you like what you've heard, leave us a review. Share us with your friends. Find 5 friends to share our podcast with. The more people that can hear our message, the happier we will be. And hopefully the happier they will be as well. Also, if you go into our show notes, you will find my download for positive affirmations, which I do believe everybody should be doing. I think it really does help. It's helped me tremendously. And look at how happy Olivia is. Like, she's so happy. She's been doing them. So we're just going to keep making her do them.
Today I am happy.
Good. Today I am happy. That's all I need to hear. So thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Daughter Dearest Podcast with Simone and Olivia Knego. We hope this episode has made your day just a little bit brighter and given you the inspiration you need to confidently go about your week. Always remember to be authentically you. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to connect with them on Instagram at Daughter Dearest Podcast, at Simone Knego, and at Olivia Knego. Till next time.